I am Catherine, 29 years old, sitting nervously in the plush interview room at TechVision Corporation. My resume sits perfectly centered on the mahogany table, representing years of hard work. The door opens and my heart stops. My sister Amanda walks in with the interview panel. The same sister who spent our childhood convincing me I would never be good enough. The same sister who now holds my future in her hands. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments section. Hit the like button. And subscribe to join my journey of sibling rivalry and sweet justice. Growing up as Catherine Reynolds meant living in the shadow of my sister Amanda. With her being 5 years older, she had already set the bar impossibly high before I even started kindergarten. Amanda was the golden child of our family, excelling in academics with straight A's, winning beauty pageants with her natural blonde hair and striking blue eyes, and showcasing her talent through piano recitals that brought tears to our neighbors' eyes. Meanwhile, I was the awkward younger sister, struggling with braces, frizzy brown hair, and grades that were good but never quite matched the Reynolds family standard of excellence. Our parents, Margaret and Harold, never explicitly favored Amanda, but their actions spoke volumes. Our living room walls showcased Amanda's trophies and certificates, while my participation awards were tucked away in a drawer. During family dinners, conversations revolved around Amanda's latest accomplishment, with my parents asking me why I couldn't be more like my sister. I still remember my 13th birthday when Amanda, then 18 and preparing for college, corrected my grammar during my own celebration. As I excitedly told my friends about a science project, she interrupted with, "Actually, Catherine, you should say you were fascinated by it, not with it. No wonder Mrs. Patterson gave you a B instead of an A." The room fell silent, my friends awkwardly stared at their plates, and my parents gently suggested I should listen to my sister since she was heading to Princeton in the fall. These moments accumulated like tiny paper cuts, each one seemingly insignificant, but collectively creating a wound that never properly healed. During my high school years, Amanda would return from college during breaks, bringing stories of her academic achievements and social success. Each visit became an opportunity for comparison, with relatives asking me if I thought I might get into an Ivy League school, like your sister. When I turned 18, I made a decision that shocked my family. Instead of applying to prestigious universities on the East Coast as expected, I chose to study digital communication at a respected, but less renowned state university. Amanda was the first to voice her disapproval during Thanksgiving dinner. Digital communication? That is just a fancy way of saying you will spend 4 years learning how to use social media. She scoffed, cutting into her turkey with surgical precision. I hope you realize actual careers require actual skills. My mother attempted to mediate. Amanda, your sister has different interests than you. Different interests or different capabilities? Amanda replied with a smile that never reached her eyes. That conversation cemented my determination to forge my own path. Throughout college, I immersed myself in my chosen field, learning about emerging digital platforms, content strategy, and data analytics. I graduated with honors, a fact that my parents proudly shared with relatives, though always with the qualifier, of course, Amanda graduated summa cum laude from Princeton. After graduation, I deliberately chose to move to Chicago, 200 miles from our hometown in Milwaukee. The physical distance provided relief from the constant comparisons, allowing me to build a life based on my own merits rather than measured against my sister. I secured a position with a small but innovative digital marketing agency called Bluebird Media, where my ideas were valued and my contributions recognized. Amanda, meanwhile, pursued her MBA and landed a management position at a prestigious tech company. During our infrequent phone calls, she would inquire about my career with thinly veiled condescension. "Still at that little bird company?" she would ask. "You know, with a Reynolds brain, you could be doing so much more. Have you considered getting a master's degree? It is never too late to course correct." Her words stung because they echoed my own occasional doubts. Working for a small company meant dealing with limited resources and uncertain prospects. When the pandemic hit, Bluebird Media struggled to maintain its client base. Despite our team working around the clock to help businesses transition to digital platforms, the economic downturn proved insurmountable. 8 months into the pandemic, our CEO gathered us on a Zoom call to announce the company was filing for bankruptcy. Just like that, I was unemployed during one of the most challenging job markets in recent history. My emergency savings dwindled as I applied for countless positions, often making it to final interview rounds only to be rejected in favor of candidates with more experience or advanced degrees. During this low point, Amanda called, ostensibly to check in. "I told you that company was never stable," she said instead of offering sympathy. "This might be a good time to reconsider your career path. Tech firms want people with analytical minds and proper credentials. Your little social media skills just are not cutting it in the real world." I ended the call prematurely, claiming my battery was dying. In reality, I could not bear another minute of her satisfaction at being right about my career choices. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would find a position that not only utilized my skills, but would make even Amanda acknowledge my professional worth. For the next 3 months, I dedicated myself to upskilling, completing certifications in advanced analytics and digital strategy. I refined my portfolio, highlighting case studies that demonstrated measurable impact. I was determined to prove that my career path was not a mistake, but a deliberate choice that aligned with my strengths and passions. Little did I know that this determination would lead me to a pivotal moment that would forever change the dynamic between my sister and me. A moment that began with a chance meeting at a tech conference and would culminate in that plush interview room at TechVision Corp, with Amanda holding my resume in her manicured hands. My life changed on a rainy Tuesday in April when I attended the Midwest Digital Innovation Conference. Originally, I had debated whether to spend the money on the ticket given my unemployment status, but my friend Melissa convinced me it would be a valuable networking opportunity. As a budget compromise, I brought my own lunch and coffee in a thermos. I was sitting alone at a small table in the convention center atrium, reviewing the session schedule and sipping my homemade coffee, when a tall man with kind eyes approached. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. I shook my head, and he sat down with his convention center coffee and a notebook. He introduced himself simply as James, and we began chatting about the morning sessions. Unlike many people at networking events who were clearly there to climb the social ladder, James listened intently to my observations about digital transformation trends. "You have a unique perspective on user experience design," he commented after I shared my thoughts on a presentation we had both attended. "Most people focus on flashy features, but you seem to understand that technology should serve people, not the other way around." His comment caught me off guard. After months of rejection and my sister's constant undermining, having someone value my professional opinion felt unfamiliar yet affirming. Our conversation flowed naturally from industry trends to personal interests, and I found myself laughing for the first time in weeks. When we exchanged contact information, I assumed it was the typical conference ritual that rarely led to actual follow-up. So I was surprised when James texted me the next day, asking if I would like to continue our conversation over dinner. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. James arrived in a simple button-down shirt and jeans, not the flashy designer clothes I had grown accustomed to seeing on the professional men in Chicago. Throughout dinner, he asked thoughtful questions about my career aspirations and listened without interrupting, a refreshing change from my family dynamics. "What do you love most about your field?" he asked. Genuinely curious. "I love that digital communication is ultimately about connecting people," I replied. "When done right, it breaks down barriers and creates communities. Anyone with a smartphone can access information that was once available only to the privileged few." James nodded appreciatively. "That is a powerful mission. Too many people in tech forget the human element." When I asked about his work, James was surprisingly vague. He mentioned working in tech leadership, but quickly steered the conversation toward his interests outside of work, like hiking and community service. At the time, I appreciated his modesty and lack of corporate bragging, not realizing there was more to the story. Over the next few months, our relationship deepened. James became my strongest supporter during my job search, reviewing my applications and helping me prepare for interviews. Unlike Amanda, who pointed out what I lacked, James highlighted my strengths. "Your analytical approach combined with creative thinking is rare," he would say. "The right company will recognize what you bring to the table." When I received rejection letters, James never suggested I change course or question my abilities. Instead, he reminded me that finding the right fit takes time. His unwavering belief in me began to counteract years of doubt instilled by my family. 6 months into our relationship, James invited me to a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin. The setting was picturesque, with autumn leaves reflecting on the still water. After a day of hiking and cooking together, we sat on the dock watching the sunset. James seemed unusually nervous, frequently checking his pocket. As the sky turned from orange to purple, he turned to me with an intensity one had not seen before. "Catherine, before I met you, I had success in business, but felt something was missing," he began. "You showed me that true connection matters more than achievements on paper. Your resilience and authenticity have made me a better person." He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a vintage-style emerald ring. "I want to build a life with you based on mutual respect and support. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I said yes. The ring fit perfectly, and as James slipped it onto my finger, he added something unexpected. "There is something I should tell you," he said, looking slightly apprehensive. "I have not been completely forthcoming about my work. I actually own a technology company. It has grown significantly over the past few years." "Own as in you are a founder?" I asked, surprised but not entirely shocked given his insights into business. "Yes," he replied. "I prefer to keep a low profile in my personal life. Too often, people treat me differently when they know." I understood his hesitation. Having grown up with a sister who judged people based on status and credentials, I assured him that his position made no difference to how I felt about him, and I meant it. James was the man who valued me for exactly who I was, title or no title. In the afterglow of our engagement, I realized I had not introduced James to my family. The thought of bringing him to a Reynolds family dinner filled me with anxiety. How would Amanda react? Would she find some way to diminish this happiness too? James sensed my apprehension. "We can take our time with family introductions," he said. "There is no rush." His understanding was yet another reason I loved him. We agreed to enjoy our engagement privately before sharing the news, giving me time to prepare for the inevitable family dynamics. A few weeks later, I was browsing job listings when a position at TechVision Corp caught my eye. The role of digital communications strategist aligned perfectly with my experience and aspirations. The company was known for its innovative approach and positive work culture. "This looks perfect for you," James said when I showed him the listing. "You should definitely apply." "Do you know anything about TechVision?" I asked. "They're a major player in the industry." James nodded thoughtfully. "They have a good reputation. Strong ethics, employee-focused culture. I think you would do well there." With his encouragement, I spent days perfecting my application, tailoring my portfolio to highlight relevant experience. When I received an email inviting me for an interview, my confidence soared. This could be the fresh start I needed, a chance to establish myself in a respected company. Little did I know that this opportunity would bring me face to face with my sister in the most unexpected way, or that my fiancé's encouragement held more significance than I could have imagined. The pieces were falling into place for a confrontation that would change everything. The moment I received the interview invitation from TechVision Corp, I launched into what Melissa called Catherine preparation mode. This meant researching everything about the company, from their founding story to their latest product launches. I discovered that TechVision had started as a small software development firm 15 years ago before expanding into cloud services and digital transformation solutions. Their CEO remained somewhat mysterious, with few public appearances and a reputation for letting the company's work speak for itself. The digital communications strategist position would involve developing comprehensive communication frameworks for clients undergoing digital transformation. It required technical knowledge, strategic thinking, and creative problem-solving, all areas I had honed during my time at Bluebird Media. For the first time in months, I felt like my specific skill set was perfectly matched to an opportunity. I created a detailed presentation showcasing my previous work, including analytics that demonstrated the impact of my campaigns. I practiced explaining complex concepts in accessible language, knowing that the ability to translate technical jargon into clear communication was essential for the role. James proved invaluable during my preparation. Each evening after he returned from work, he would help me rehearse answers to potential interview questions. He was particularly good at posing unexpected challenges that forced me to think on my feet. "What if they ask about a time you failed?" he suggested during one practice session. I hesitated, uncomfortable with the question. I would probably mention the Greenfield campaign that did not meet its engagement targets. James nodded encouragingly. "Good start. Now go deeper. What did you learn? How would you approach it differently now?" His questions pushed me to reflect on my experiences more thoroughly, identifying lessons I had internalized but never fully articulated. Through these sessions, I not only prepared for the interview but gained a clearer understanding of my professional growth. 3 days before the interview, James surprised me with a gift, a sleek leather portfolio embossed with my initials. "For your big day," he said, kissing my forehead. "You are going to impress them." The night before the interview, nervous energy kept me awake. I tried James's meditation technique, focusing on slow breaths while visualizing a successful outcome. When sleep finally came, it was fitful, filled with dreams of walking into wrong buildings and forgetting my own name. I woke before my alarm, stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. After a quick shower, I stood before my closet, deliberating between the navy blue suit I had worn to countless interviews and the charcoal gray pantsuit I had purchased on sale but never worn. I opted for the latter, pairing it with a cream silk blouse and my grandmother's pearl earrings for a touch of personal confidence. As I applied minimal makeup, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "You're going to knock their socks off today. Remember, you've got this." James called as I was finishing my coffee. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice warm with concern. "Nervous but ready," I replied. "I keep reminding myself that this is just a conversation about work I love." "Exactly," he said. "Just be the authentic Catherine who impressed me at that conference. They would be lucky to have you." His confidence in me provided a buffer against the self-doubt that typically accompanied high-stakes situations. After we hung up, I tucked the emerald engagement ring into my inner jacket pocket. I rarely wore it to professional settings, not wanting to field personal questions, but having it close felt like carrying a talisman of support. The TechVision headquarters occupied the upper floors of a gleaming glass tower in downtown Chicago. As my Uber approached the building, sunlight reflected off the windows, creating an almost ethereal glow. The company logo, a stylized blue and silver T within a circle, adorned the entrance. The lobby featured minimalist design with warm wood accents, striking a balance between modern technology and human comfort, precisely the image TechVision projected in their marketing. I approached the reception desk, where a woman with a friendly smile greeted me. "Good morning. I am Catherine Reynolds, here for an interview at 10. "Welcome to TechVision, Ms. Reynolds," she replied, checking her computer. "I am Sophia. Let me notify the HR team that you have arrived." She handed me a visitor badge and directed me to a seating area where I could review my materials while waiting. The lobby displayed digital screens showcasing TechVision's current projects and company values. I noted their emphasis on collaboration, innovation, and integrity, values that resonated with my own professional philosophy. After 10 minutes, a tall man with glasses approached. "Ms. Reynolds? I am Brian from Human Resources. We are ready for your interview now." As we rode the elevator to the 20th floor, Brian made pleasant conversation about the weather and my commute, putting me slightly more at ease. He led me through an open office area where employees worked at modern workstations or gathered in glass-walled meeting rooms. The environment hummed with focused energy rather than frantic tension, a good sign for company culture. Brian stopped before a conference room with frosted glass doors. The panel is ready for you. Best of luck. Taking a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and entered the room. 3 people sat at a long table, and as my eyes adjusted to the change in lighting, I recognized the woman sitting on the far right. My breath caught in my throat. Amanda, my sister. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, her expression professionally neutral as she reviewed what appeared to be my resume. She looked up, and for a split second, surprise registered in her eyes before her features composed themselves into cool detachment. The man at the center of the table stood and extended his hand. Ms. Reynolds, welcome. I am Thomas Wilson, Director of Client Services. This is Linda Chin, our Technical Director, and Amanda Reynolds, our Communications Department Head. My mind raced as I shook each person's hand, ending with my sister. Her grip was firm, her smile tight. Ms. Reynolds, she said formally, as if we were strangers. In that moment, I understood the bizarre coincidence. Amanda had never mentioned working for TechVision, though I knew she had changed jobs recently. Our limited communication meant I had no idea she now headed the very department I hoped to join. The realization sent waves of panic through me. My sister, who had spent a lifetime undermining my confidence, now held direct power over my professional future. I took the seat opposite the panel, willing my hands not to tremble as I placed my portfolio on the table. The familiar voice of self-doubt, sounding suspiciously like Amanda's, whispered that I should excuse myself and leave. But another voice, one that had grown stronger since meeting James, countered that I deserved to be in that room based on my qualifications. Thomas smiled encouragingly. Shall we begin? With that invitation, I stepped into what would become the most pivotal interview of my life, determined not to let family history derail this opportunity. Little did I know how dramatically the power dynamic was about to shift. Thomas Wilson began the interview with standard questions about my background and interest in the position. I outlined my experience at Bluebird Media, highlighting campaigns that had increased client engagement by 45%. Linda Chin followed with technical questions about analytics tools and content management systems, nodding appreciatively at my detailed responses. Throughout these exchanges, Amanda remained silent, occasionally making notes while wearing an expression of mild skepticism. Her silence was more unnerving than direct confrontation would have been. I knew this tactic from childhood. The way she would quietly observe before delivering a perfectly timed critique. When it was finally her turn to ask questions, Amanda leaned forward with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Catherine, I notice a significant gap in your employment. Could you elaborate on what you have been doing during this pause in your career? The emphasis on pause was subtle but clear, suggesting I had been idle rather than actively job searching during a global pandemic. I maintained my professional demeanor, explaining how I had used the time to complete additional certifications and expand my skill set. Interesting, Amanda replied. Those online certificates certainly make for resume fillers. But do you have any experience with enterprise-level communication strategy? TechVision serves Fortune 500 clients with complex needs. Before I could answer, she continued, for instance, how would you approach a multinational pharmaceutical company requiring regulatory compliance across 17 different markets? The question was deliberately specific, designed to highlight areas where my experience might fall short. I recognized the technique because I had watched Amanda use it on others growing up, creating impossible standards and then expressing disappointment when they were not met. That is an excellent question, I replied, refusing to be rattled. While I have not worked with pharmaceutical clients specifically, I did develop a compliance framework for financial services clients that addressed regulatory requirements across North American markets. The principles of identifying key stakeholders, mapping regulatory landscapes, and creating scalable compliance protocols would transfer effectively to pharmaceutical contexts. Thomas nodded with interest, but Amanda immediately cut in. But financial regulations and pharmaceutical regulations are entirely different domains. Do you really think that experience is comparable? Her tone carried the same dismissive quality I remembered from family dinners when she would pick apart my achievements. Linda and Thomas exchanged uncomfortable glances, seemingly aware of the unusual tension. As the interview progressed, Amanda's questions became increasingly pointed. When I described my approach to crisis communication, she interrupted with, "That strategy might work for a small local business, but TechVision handles critical communications for companies where millions of dollars are at stake. Have you ever managed a situation with that level of consequence?" Each question carried the subtext, "You are not good enough." With each response, I fought to maintain my composure, drawing on preparation and genuine expertise. Thomas attempted to steer the conversation back to my actual qualifications several times, but Amanda skillfully redirected to areas where she believed I would falter. When I referenced a successful social media campaign, Amanda let out a barely audible sigh. "Catherine, social media management is entry-level work. This position requires strategic communication architecture. Perhaps you misunderstood the role." The comment struck at my deepest insecurity, the fear that my career path was somehow less legitimate than traditional corporate trajectories. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, but forced myself to respond calmly, explaining how the campaign was part of a larger, integrated communication strategy that increased client revenue by 32%. Thomas seemed impressed. "Those are excellent results. How did you measure the direct impact of your communication strategy on revenue?" Before I could answer, Amanda slid my resume across the table. "I am concerned about the fundamental qualifications here. Catherine, your degree is from State University, correct? Not exactly known for its rigorous communication program." Linda looked uncomfortable. "Amanda, I think we should focus on the candidate's experience rather than educational background." Amanda smiled tightly. "Of course. But TechVision maintains certain standards. We typically recruit from top-tier programs." The implication was clear. Despite my experience and demonstrated results, my education would always be deemed insufficient in her eyes. It was a replay of every family gathering where Amanda had casually mentioned her Ivy League connections while asking about my little state school. As I began describing my capstone project, which had won a regional award, Amanda checked her watch ostentatiously. When I finished, she shuffled through my portfolio with cursory interest before closing it. "I think we have heard enough," she said, then looked directly at me with cold eyes. "Catherine, I will be frank. This position requires someone with enterprise experience and advanced strategic capabilities. Based on what I have seen today, you are not even qualified for this role." The room fell silent. Thomas cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with Amanda's bluntness. "I think what Amanda means is that the position involves certain challenges that might not align with your current experience level." But Amanda was not finished. She picked up my resume, holding it between two fingers as if it were contaminated. "Let me be clear about what TechVision needs. We need communication strategists who have proven themselves in enterprise environments, who understand the complexities of global markets, and who bring innovative approaches based on solid theoretical foundations." With deliberate slowness, she dropped my resume into the trash bin beside her chair. "Not someone who managed social media for local businesses and thinks that qualifies them for strategic leadership." The action was so blatantly unprofessional that both Thomas and Linda appeared shocked. I sat frozen, feeling as though I were 13 again, watching Amanda tear apart the story I had written for a school competition, telling me I had no talent for creative writing. "Amanda, that is not how we conduct interviews at TechVision," Linda said sharply. Thomas tried to salvage the situation. "Ms. Reynolds, please understand that the hiring process involves multiple perspectives. We value your experience and would like to continue reviewing your application." But the damage was done. The familiar feeling of inadequacy washed over me, the same sensation that had followed me throughout childhood and early adulthood. Years of therapy had helped me recognize this feeling and resist it, but in that moment, with my professional future at stake, the old wounds reopened. I thought of all the times Amanda had diminished my achievements, from elementary school art projects to college graduation. I remembered her voice at family gatherings, saying things like, "Catherine works in social media. You know, posting things on Facebook, reducing years of strategic work to the simplest description. As Thomas asked if I had questions for the panel, trying to return the interview to professional territory, I struggled to formulate a response. The room felt airless, my carefully prepared questions evaporating under the heat of humiliation. This was not just a difficult interview, it was a public confirmation of what Amanda had always implied, that I would never measure up. I opened my mouth to respond, determined to maintain dignity even in defeat, when a knock sounded at the door. What happened next would transform not only the interview, but the entire dynamic between my sister and me in ways neither of us could have anticipated. The door opened, and James walked in. Not James, my fiancé, but James Miller, CEO of TechVision Corporation. The same man whose company profile I had studied, whose leadership philosophy I had admired during my research. The same man who had proposed to me by a lakeside cabin 2 months earlier. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Thomas and Linda straightened in their chairs, their expressions shifting to respectful attention. Amanda transformed most dramatically, her demeanor softening from cold dismissal to eager deference. "Mr. Miller," she said with a warm smile entirely unlike the one she had directed at me moments before. "We were not expecting you." "What a pleasant surprise." James nodded politely. "I apologize for interrupting. I have been sitting in on final interviews this quarter as part of our initiative to refine the hiring process." His eyes met mine briefly, betraying no personal recognition. "Please, continue as if I am not here." As he moved toward an empty chair in the corner, Amanda rushed to speak. "We were just discussing Ms. Reynolds' qualifications. I was explaining that while her background is interesting, she might not be the ideal fit for the strategic demands of this position." James paused, then changed direction, walking not to the corner but directly to where I sat. "Actually, before you continue, I would like to properly introduce myself to the candidate." He extended his hand to me, and as I stood to shake it, he leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on my cheek. "Catherine, it is wonderful to see you here today." Then, with perfect composure, he added, "I believe you all should know that Catherine is my fiancé." The room froze. Thomas blinked rapidly, processing this new information. Linda's mouth formed a small O of surprise. But it was Amanda's reaction that burned itself into my memory. Her face, so carefully controlled throughout the interview, crumbled in shocked recognition. Her eyes started from James to me, then down to the trash bin where my resume lay discarded. "Your fiancé?" she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Yes," James confirmed pleasantly, though I asked her to keep our relationship private during the application process. I wanted Catherine to be evaluated solely on her professional merits, which are considerable. He turned to look at the trash bin, then back at Amanda. With deliberate movements, he reached down, retrieved my resume, and smoothed it carefully before placing it back on the table. "Would you mind explaining why my fiancé's resume ended up in the trash, Amanda?" he asked, his tone professional but carrying unmistakable authority. Amanda's face had lost all color. There must have been a misunderstanding. I was simply reorganizing my materials." "Interesting," James replied. "Because from outside the door, it sounded like you told a highly qualified candidate, and I quote, 'You are not even qualified,' before discarding her resume. That does not align with our interview protocols or our company values regarding respect and fair evaluation." Thomas intervened, clearly attempting damage control. "Mr. Miller, we were having a robust discussion about qualifications. I assure you the interview was proceeding according to standard procedures." James turned to him with a measured gaze. Was it standard procedure when Amanda emphasized Catherine's educational background as a disqualifying factor? Or when she dismissed 5 years of progressive experience in digital communication strategy as entry-level work? Linda shifted uncomfortably. "To be fair, sir, Amanda did take an unusually critical stance in this interview. I was about to suggest we redirect to more objective evaluation criteria." Amanda's composure continued to crumble as she realized the full implications of her actions. "James, Mr. Miller, I had no idea about your connection to Catherine. If I had known." "That is precisely the problem," James interrupted, his voice carrying quiet authority. Evaluations should not change based on personal connections. Every candidate deserves respect and objective assessment, regardless of who they know or do not know. He turned to me with a professional nod. Catherine, I apologize for this unusual situation. Would you be comfortable continuing the interview, or would you prefer to reschedule with a different panel? All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I faced a crucial decision. I could walk away, using James's relationship as an escape from this humiliating situation. Or I could stand my ground, demonstrating that I belonged in that room based on my own merits. I straightened my shoulders. I would prefer to continue if that is acceptable. I prepared extensively for this interview and believe my qualifications speak for themselves. James nodded with professional approval, though I caught the flicker of personal pride in his eyes. Excellent. Thomas, Linda, please continue with your evaluation. Amanda, I would like you to observe only for the remainder of this session. We will discuss interview protocols afterward. As James took Amanda's place at the table, she moved silently to the chair in the corner, her expression a mixture of shock and dawning horror. The power dynamic had completely reversed. My sister, who had held authority over me my entire life, now sat witnessing my professional competence while facing potential consequences for her unprofessional behavior. Thomas cleared his throat and resumed the interview with renewed professionalism. Catherine, you were about to tell us about your experience with integrated communication strategies. Please continue. For the next 30 minutes, I answered questions with confidence, presenting case studies from my portfolio and addressing technical queries from Linda. James occasionally asked insightful questions, but maintained professional distance, giving no indication of our personal relationship beyond the initial revelation. Throughout it all, Amanda sat silently, watching the interview unfold with an expression I had never seen before. It was not just embarrassment or fear for her position. It was something deeper, a fundamental shift in perception. For perhaps the first time, she was seeing me not as her lesser little sister, but as a capable professional whose skills had earned the respect of people she admired. As the interview concluded, Thomas thanked me for my time and professionalism. We will be in touch regarding next steps, Ms. Reynolds. Thank you for your comprehensive responses today. James stood and shook my hand formally. Thank you for coming in. Brian will show you out. As I gathered my materials, I caught Amanda's eye briefly. The coldness was gone, replaced by something I could not quite identify. Confusion? Regret? Or perhaps, most surprisingly, a glimmer of respect? I left the room with my head high, knowing that regardless of the outcome, something fundamental had changed. The dynamic that had defined our relationship since childhood had been irrevocably altered. What remained to be seen was what would emerge in its place. Brian escorted me to a small waiting area near the elevators, mentioning that someone would be with me shortly to discuss next steps. Once alone, I released a shaky breath and sank into a chair, the full weight of what had just transpired hitting me all at once. My hands trembled slightly as I texted Melissa, "You will not believe what just happened." Before I could elaborate, the door opened and James entered. His professional demeanor immediately softened as he closed the door behind him. "Catherine, I am so sorry," he said, crossing the room to sit beside me. "I had no idea Amanda was your sister or that she worked in our communications department. Her last name is Reynolds, but I never made the connection until I saw her in that room with you." "You did not know?" I asked, still processing everything. "Then why were you there?" James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized for moments when he felt he had missed something important. "I really do sit in on final interviews periodically. It is part of our culture initiative. Pure coincidence that I chose today." He paused, looking troubled. "Has she always treated you that way?" The question opened a flood of emotions I had been suppressing throughout the interview. "Since we were children," I admitted. "Amanda has always measured me and found me wanting." "Why did you never tell me your sister worked at TechVision?" he asked gently. "Because I did not know," I replied. "We do not exactly keep up with each other's careers." I knew she had a management position at a tech company, but she never mentioned which one. "We have not spoken in months." James took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in the soothing gesture I had come to love. I should have told you about my position here. I wanted you to apply because I genuinely thought you would be perfect for the role, but I worried if you knew I was CEO, you might feel uncomfortable or doubt yourself. The realization struck me. Is that why you were so vague about your work? Why you never brought me to company events? He nodded. I wanted our relationship to develop without the complications my position sometimes creates. People treat me differently when they know. Some become intimidated, others opportunistic. With you, it was just real. I understood his reasoning, but could not help feeling a twinge of hurt. I wish I had known before walking into that room. You are right, he acknowledged. I should have trusted you more. The question now is what you want to happen next. Before I could answer, a soft knock interrupted us. James called for the person to enter, and Thomas appeared, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Mr. Miller. The team is assembled in conference room B whenever you are ready, he said, carefully avoiding my gaze. James nodded. Thank you, Thomas. I will be there shortly. Once the door closed, he turned back to me. I need to address what happened with the team, but first I need to know what you want, Catherine. This is your career, your future. Do you still want this position? Knowing the situation, it was a complex question. The role itself remained perfect for my skills and aspirations, but working alongside Amanda after today seemed impossible. Yet walking away felt like allowing her to win once again. I want the job, I said finally. But only if I am truly qualified, not because of us. I need to know I earned it. James squeezed my hand. Your qualifications impressed everyone, including Linda, who is notoriously difficult to impress. The position is yours based on merit if you want it. And Amanda? I asked, the question hanging heavy between us. That is a separate issue that needs addressing, he replied. Regardless of your personal history, her behavior violated our company values and interview protocols. There will be consequences, but those would happen whether you were my fiancé or not. As he stood to leave, the door burst open without a knock. Amanda stood there, her composed facade completely shattered. Catherine, we need to talk, she said, her voice tight with emotion. James looked between us. This can wait until after the formal meeting, Amanda. No, it cannot, she insisted, then added belatedly, sir. James turned to me with a questioning look. I nodded. Knowing this confrontation was inevitable. It is okay. We should talk. I will be in conference room B if either of you need me, James said, giving my shoulder a supportive squeeze before leaving us alone. As the door closed, Amanda and I faced each other in uncomfortable silence. She looked smaller somehow. The authority she had wielded so confidently during the interview now stripped away. Why did you not tell me you were engaged to James Miller? She finally asked, her voice a mixture of accusation and bewilderment. Why would I countered. We barely speak, Amanda. And when we do, you spend most of the time criticizing my choices. She flinched at the directness of my response. I did not know you were qualified for this position. That is the problem, I said, years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. You have never believed I was qualified for anything. Not since we were children. You decided early on that I was less than you, and nothing I have ever done has changed your mind. Amanda sank into a chair, looking genuinely startled by my words. That is not true. I have always pushed you because I wanted you to succeed. No, I shook my head firmly. You pushed me because it made you feel superior. Every accomplishment of mine had to be diminished. Every choice I made had to be wrong. Do you have any idea what it feels like to grow up knowing that nothing you do will ever be good enough in your sister's eyes? My voice cracked slightly, and I took a deep breath to steady myself. Today in that interview, you were not evaluating a candidate. You were doing what you have always done, trying to prove I do not measure up. Amanda was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. I did not realize that is how you felt. How else could I feel? I asked. You threw my resume in the trash, Amanda. In front of colleagues. Would you have done that to any other candidate? She did not answer immediately, which was answer enough. I might lose my job over this, she finally said. That would be because of your actions, not mine, I replied, refusing to accept the implied guilt trip. I never asked for special treatment. In fact, I did not even know you worked here when I applied. Amanda looked up, confusion evident in her expression. You really did not know? You were not trying to. I do not know, show me up or something. The question revealed so much about how she viewed our relationship, always as a competition. Not everything is about you, Amanda. I applied for this job because it matched my skills and career goals. That is all. She seemed to process this information slowly, as if reconsidering years of interactions through a new lens. The CEO of TechVision, she finally said, shaking her head slightly. How did you even meet him? At a conference, I replied, where we talked about digital communication strategies. The very topic you dismissed as unimportant today. Before she could respond, the door opened again and Brian appeared. Ms. Reynolds, Mr. Miller has requested your presence in conference room B, he said, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room. Amanda stood, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. Both of us. Just Ms. Amanda Reynolds at this time, Brian clarified. As Amanda moved toward the door, she paused and looked back at me. For what it is worth, your presentation was actually quite good. The Hudson Media case study was impressive. The words were awkward, perhaps the first genuine compliment she had offered in years. I nodded, not yet ready to accept the olive branch, but acknowledging the effort. After she left, I sat alone, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Regardless of what happened with the job, I had finally spoken my truth to Amanda. The power she had held over my self-perception was diminishing. Not because James had revealed his position, but because I had finally stood up for myself and my worth. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa, still waiting to hear what happened. Are you okay? I began typing a response, trying to summarize the surreal events of the morning when Brian returned. Ms. Reynolds, Mr. Miller would like to see you now. As I followed him through the corridors of TechVision, I wondered what awaited me. Would I be offered the position? Would I accept it? And most uncertainly, what would this mean for my relationship with Amanda? The answers remained unclear, but for the first time in our shared history, I would be approaching these questions from a position of equal footing rather than from her shadow. The meeting with James and the HR director, Patricia Sullivan, was brief and professional. James maintained appropriate boundaries, addressing me as Ms. Reynolds throughout the discussion. Patricia explained that based on my qualifications and interview performance, TechVision was offering me the position of digital communications strategist. Your portfolio demonstrates exactly the analytical yet creative approach we need, Patricia said, sliding the offer letter across the table. Particularly impressive was your work integrating communication strategies across different platforms while maintaining consistent messaging. I reviewed the offer, noting the competitive salary and benefits package. Thank you for this opportunity. May I have 24 hours to consider? Of course, Patricia replied. Standard procedure. As the meeting concluded, James added, for transparency, I should mention that I will not be directly involved in your departmental supervision. You would report to Thomas Wilson, with Linda Chen providing technical oversight. And Amanda? I asked, the question unavoidable. Patricia and James exchanged glances before Patricia answered carefully. There are ongoing discussions about departmental restructuring. Amanda Reynolds will be transitioning to a different role within the organization. I understood the professional euphemism. Amanda was facing consequences, though not termination. I felt conflicted relief that my sister was not losing her job, even as I recognized that accountability was necessary. After leaving TechVision, I spent the evening discussing the offer with Melissa over wine in my apartment. The situation was complicated on multiple levels, professional and personal. So let me get this straight, Melissa said, refilling her glass. Your fiancé is secretly the CEO of a major tech company. Your sister works there and tried to sabotage your interview. Then your fiancé walked in, exposed the relationship, and now you are being offered the job while your sister is being demoted. When summarized that way, it sounded like a plot from a television drama rather than my actual life. That about covers it. "Are you going to take it?" she asked. I sighed, twisting my engagement ring, which I had put back on after leaving the interview. The position is perfect. The company culture seems genuine, aside from today's disaster. But working in the same company as Amanda, even in different departments, would be awkward as hell, Melissa finished. But Catherine, this is your dream job. Are you really going to let your sister take that from you too? Her question struck home. Throughout my life, I had made choices based partly on avoiding Amanda's criticism or competition. Moving to Chicago, choosing my college. Even some of my hobbies had been influenced by the desire to carve out space where she could not diminish me. I need to make this decision based on what is best for my career, I said finally. Not on Amanda. The next morning, I called James to discuss the offer outside our personal relationship. We met at a small coffee shop halfway between our apartments. A neutral territory where we could speak honestly. I want this position, I told him. But I need absolute clarity that I will be judged on my performance alone. No special treatment. No protection if I fail to meet expectations. James nodded. I would not have it any other way. That is why I have removed myself entirely from your reporting structure. And our relationship? I asked. How do we handle that professionally? Transparency is best, he replied. The executive team already knows. HR has protocols for this situation. It is not the first time employees have been in relationships, though admittedly the CEO angle is less common. We discussed practical concerns, from disclosure requirements to how we would maintain boundaries between work and home. By the time we finished our coffee, I felt confident that accepting the position was the right choice professionally, regardless of the personal complications. Later that afternoon, I signed and returned the offer letter. My start date was set for 2 weeks later, giving the company time to complete the departmental adjustments they had mentioned. The night before my first day, Amanda called unexpectedly. We had not spoken since the interview, and I answered with apprehension. I heard you accepted the position, she said without preamble. Yes, I replied, unsure where the conversation was heading. There was a long pause before she continued. I owe you an apology, Catherine. A real one, not just for the interview. Her words caught me off guard. Amanda had rarely apologized for anything in our lives, always finding ways to justify her actions or redirect blame. I have been doing a lot of thinking. She continued when I did not immediately respond. The things you said about how I have treated you. I did not see it that way, but I have been speaking with someone. A therapist. She suggested I might have some competitive issues to work through. I sat down on my couch, processing this revelation. You are seeing a therapist? Part of my performance improvement plan, she admitted. But it has been illuminating. I did not realize how much our childhood shaped my view of myself. I always felt I had to be perfect because that was what everyone expected. And then I projected those expectations onto you. It was perhaps the most vulnerable I had ever heard my sister. I appreciate you telling me this, I said carefully. But it does not erase years of history between us. I know, she replied quietly. I am not asking for instant forgiveness. Just a chance to do better. We will be working for the same company. Even if I have been reassigned to the regional accounts division. A demotion? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A lateral move with additional oversight. She said with a hint of her old precision. Deserved, I might add. What I did was unprofessional regardless of our personal history. We talked for nearly an hour. Not resolving decades of complicated feelings, but at least acknowledging them openly. By the time we hung up, we had agreed to a professional truce and tentative steps toward a new kind of relationship. My first day at TechVision was a whirlwind of orientation sessions, introductions, and setting up my workspace. James maintained professional distance, though he sent a simple text at lunch, proud of you. Dinner tonight to celebrate. Thomas Wilson, now my direct supervisor, was meticulously fair in his treatment, perhaps overcompensating for the disastrous interview. Linda Chin became an unexpected ally, appreciating my technical knowledge and creative approach to communication challenges. I encountered Amanda only once that first week, passing in the hallway near the cafeteria. Our exchange was brief but civil, lacking both the coldness of the interview and the forced warmth of family gatherings. It was something new. A relationship being redefined on adult terms rather than childhood patterns. In the months that followed, I established myself at TechVision through dedicated work and innovative approaches to client communications. My first major project, developing an integrated communication strategy for a healthcare technology client, exceeded engagement targets by 60%. Thomas presented the results at the quarterly meeting, giving me full credit for the strategy. James and I maintained clear boundaries at work while planning our wedding for the following spring. We decided on a small ceremony by the lake where he had proposed, with close friends and carefully selected family members. The question of Amanda's role in the wedding arose during a Sunday brunch with our parents, who had been shocked to learn about the TechVision situation. Amanda should be your maid of honor, my mother suggested, still clinging to traditional family expectations despite everything. I shook my head. Melissa will be my maid of honor. She has been my strongest supporter for years. But your sister, my father began, will be invited as a guest, I finished firmly. Mom, Dad, Amanda and I are working on our relationship, but we are not there yet. Maybe we never will be in the way you imagine. And that has to be okay. My parents exchanged glances, slowly recognizing that the family dynamic had fundamentally changed. The automatic deference to Amanda, the assumption that I would accommodate her, was no longer accepted. 6 months into my position at TechVision, I was assigned to lead a cross-functional team developing communication frameworks for the company's new artificial intelligence division. The project required collaboration with various departments, including Amanda's regional accounts team. Our first meeting could have been awkward, but we both approached it with professional focus. After the meeting, Amanda stopped me as others filed out of the conference room. Your presentation was excellent, she said, no trace of condescension in her voice. Especially the section on ethical communication protocols. Thank you, I replied. Your insights on regional market differences will be valuable as we refine the approach. It was a small moment, but significant in its normalcy. Two professionals acknowledging each other's expertise without the weight of childhood rivalry. That evening, as James and I cooked dinner together in our newly shared apartment, I recounted the interaction. It felt different, I explained, chopping vegetables while he prepared the chicken. Like we were just colleagues with useful perspectives to share. James smiled. That is progress. Do you think you will ever be close? I considered the question carefully. Not in the Hallmark movie sense. Too much has happened. But something new might be possible. Something based on who we are now rather than who we were as children. As our wedding day approached, Amanda and I established a cautious new relationship. Not best friends or even typical sisters, but two women acknowledging their shared history while creating healthier patterns. She helped with some wedding preparations, offering suggestions without attempting to take control. On the morning of the wedding, she surprised me with a gift. A vintage jewelry box containing a simple pearl necklace. It was grandmother's, she explained. I know she would want you to have it today. The gesture, thoughtful rather than grand, reflected our evolving relationship perfectly. The ceremony by the lake was everything I had hoped for, intimate and authentic. James and I exchanged vows we had written ourselves, promising support and honesty rather than perfection. As I looked out at our gathered loved ones, I saw Amanda sitting beside our parents, her smile genuine if still a bit reserved. At the reception, she approached us with 2 glasses of champagne. To the CEO and the communications strategist, she toasted. A formidable team. James laughed. In the office and out. As the evening progressed, I found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey that had brought me here. From a child living in her sister's shadow to a woman standing in her own light. The path had been neither straight nor easy. But each challenge had strengthened my understanding of myself and my worth. The greatest lesson I had learned was not about sibling rivalry or workplace dynamics, but about the power of believing in your own value. For years, I had allowed Amanda's perception to shape my self-image. The true transformation began when I recognized that external validation, even from family, could not determine my worth. Have you ever allowed someone else's opinion to define you? I hope my story shows that it is never too late to reclaim your narrative. Looking back, I am grateful not just for the happy ending with James, but for the strength I found in standing up for myself. Comment below with your own experiences of finding your voice. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories of personal transformation. Like this video if you have ever had to prove someone wrong about your capabilities. And share it with anyone who needs a reminder of their own worth. Thank you for listening, and remember that the most important validation comes from within.